shock the world here.
I'm calling for an open tryout. If anyone is watching this, I'm calling for an open tryout. I got a year of eligibility
You
left.
might have some.
Anthony, where is home for you?
Home is Medland.
That's wrong.
All right, I hear what you're saying, but I'm just have to disagree.
While we were in class this morning, I was watching his mixtape, and this guy catches and shoots from anywhere.
Are you ready for some debate? Because Bobcat Breakdown starts right now.
Hello, friends. It's time for another episode of Bobcat Breakdown. I am James Bueno, and joining alongside me here are Brandon Murdoch and Connor Court.
Yeah,
are you guys ready to go?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of healthy debate tonight, but I just wanted to point out the fact that when Brandon first walked in the media suite today, we were both, kind of matching with those striped suits on, so I just thought it was a little bit of a fun interaction, but I'm ready for some healthy debate.
Yeah, that was awesome. I came into the studio today, and I was coming in with my game face on. I saw my opponent had some great fashion choice.
Hey,
and
you had some great fashion choices as well.
I appreciate it, but I'm ready for a great debate as well.
All right, guys. Earlier this week, legendary basketball coach Jay Wright shared his thoughts on the Bobcats men's basketball team's run on CBS. Let's take a listen.
You know what, Jerry, I look at Quinnipiac here, a little mid-major love, and I know you have them there because they're 2 games up in the regular season right now in the MAC. Tom Pecora, legendary New Yorker, coaching that team. But let's all remember, we have these teams here because they're up in the regular season. They're going to be automatic qualifiers. But a team like Quinnipiac, much like Iona used to be from the same conference, could give Tennessee some trouble because great guard play and an older team.
Yeah. And Quinnipiac known more for polls than brackets, but good to see them here.
Now, guys, after hearing this, how do you think Wright's predictions affected the mentality of the team headed into the Niagara game on Sunday? Connor, take it away.
Yeah, I honestly don't think it had any correlation at all. I mean, if we want to put that same math or science, whatever you want to put it up to it, against this next scenario after Tom Pecora signed his new 4-year extension to the 2078 school year after he congratulated Pecora, we're already mailing it in that Quinnipiac's going to lose against Fairfield this Friday. And I don't think that's going to happen at all. Like I said, if we're using the same logic, they're already going to lose to Fairfield, which is just, I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be a pretty competitive game. Yeah, you see on your screen right now, they're 3-2 in the last 5 games, and games have been a lot tighter than they have throughout the entire season. But, Wright was just doing it as just like a little nod to Pecora, especially because the great job that he's obviously done in his first year, because Pecora used to be an assistant at Hofstra for Jay Wright before he went to Villanova, in 2001. And yeah, the Bobcats have been as high as a 15 seed and a 16 seed throughout all the predictions that we've seen across so many media platforms. But players always want to say they're taking it one game at a time, but I feel like at some point it has to. But I don't think that was the real indicative moment that the mentality is starting to get to them.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that one. I don't think it affected them at all. 'Cause it's not the first time they've heard it. Andy Katz has put out plenty of polls of them being in a 15-16, like you said, playing the likes of Tennessee, UConn, stiff competition. I think these 2 back-to-back losses they've had is coming off a 10-game winning streak. And Tom Pecora said it earlier, or a few days ago. The loss against St. Mary's was a tough schedule loss after a tough game at St. Peter's a couple days ago, traveling a big distance to that game. And the game on Sunday against Niagara, I think they just got outplayed and they just came out flat, like Tom Pecora said. I don't think it had anything to do with how the words of Jay Wright.
Yeah, and I think it was mentioned great on Bobcat Game Day by Emily Sweeney that it's probably better off that they had these back-to-back losses this early in the season. Obviously, you want to be playing your best basketball leading right up to Atlantic City and into March, because that's when all the magic happens. That's why we love college basketball so much. But I think it's good that the 2 losses happen right now. It just happened to come at a weird time when they've gotten all this publicity from such a legendary head coach that it kind of adds up to one thing, but I don't think that was the case at all.
All right, guys. First debate, we have an agreement, but let's hit the other side of the courts as the women's basketball team is struggling to find the groove. Gentlemen, how can Coach Tricia Fabry better utilize her rotation players? Brandon, let's start with you.
Personally, I don't have anything wrong with the way she's using her minutes-wise, but I think she's got to get more players involved. I think they're using Foley way too much. I think they got to limit the focus on her just a little bit, get more players involved. In the last game against Manhattan, Anna Foley had 21 shots. So Ava Seleni, Carson Martin, and Grace LaBarge combined for 26. Those are the next 3 top scorers for this team, and they are barely putting up more shots than their top scorer. And I think they've got to play through more players and make Foley's life a little bit easier. And doing that could make her an even better player and a bit more explosive scorer.
Yeah, I feel like you're completely wrong, actually, Brandon. I think the ball needs to be the offense essentially needs to run through Anna Foley at this point. Whenever she got the ball early in the season at that left or right elbow, running after their basic offensive set that we've seen throughout this entire season, she was able to pass to the opposite wing, or she was able to rip through and make that one dribble drive to her offhand or her strong hand and be able to hit it or use those passing abilities. And I feel like you got to get Carson Martin the ball more often, because when you look at since Jackie Grisdale went down, Ava Salendi's had to step up quite a bit, and she's been running the 1, and Carson Martin throughout her entire career has been running the point, and now she's kind of like the 2 shooting guard right now. So I think she hasn't really had more than 15 points since the middle of January. That's almost a month, and that's when she scored 23, and they're constantly changing rotations, and I feel like that's got to be coming to the pact where it's not to the initial point that I actually wanted to make, to where they need to play to their strengths instead of just kind of rotating everyone around where they're not comfortable in the role that they're in. And obviously, like I said, Foley needs to run through the entire offense in Martin. Even if you get like a high pick and roll screen on the wing or at the top of the key, I think the offense just needs to completely run through the two of them and have those, those passes coming off of each other to better stay competitive in those games.
And that'd be a great point if it was right. And see, Trisha Fabry made it a point in the last game to play through Anna Foley. Yeah. And let me tell you, over the last three out of the last 4 games, they have been below their season average in points. Yeah. And the only game that they went above it, because the game had extra time, went to overtime. Yeah. Personally, I think they've got to find a different route.
All right, guys, that's all the time we have. But stick with us, because when we come back, we'll be debuting a brand new basketball segment that'll make you feel like a kid again. Don't go anywhere, because Bobcat Breakdown returns in 90 seconds.
Meet the scan, a simple procedure whose mission is to detect lung cancer early.
I'm here to save you.
But I feel fine.
That's great, but you may still be at high risk for lung cancer.
Oh man, that's a new fence.
If you smoke, early detection could save your life. Learn more at savedbythescan.org.
I think it's just vapor with flavor.
It won't hurt my kid like cigarettes, right?
Vaping is safer than smoking, isn't it?
There's really not even that much nicotine in them, right?
My kid?
My kid knows it's dangerous.
Get your head out of the cloud. Today, nearly 8,000 kids will start vaping, maybe even yours. Learn about the dangers at talkaboutvaping.org.
I don't think that many kids in my son's school even do it.
He makes fun of his friend who vapes.
He would never try it.
She's into soccer. She's on the honor roll. She's just not the type.
No way.
No way.
No way.
No way, my kid would never vape.
Get your head out of the cloud. Today, nearly 8,000 kids will start vaping, maybe even yours. Learn about the dangers at talkaboutvaping.org.
Welcome back to Bobcat Breakdown, and it's time for a little segment we like to call Bobblecats. Each of you needs to pick one current Bobcats basketball athlete and compare them to a professional player. Let's kick this one off with the women's team. Connor, start us off.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Anna Foley. I know we talked about it earlier coming out of the break, how the offense kind of needed to run through her. And I think the pro player that makes the most sense for her, it's got to be Breanna Stewart. Obviously, the points and the statistics kind of are leaning a lot more heavily towards Breanna Stewart, but that's because she did play more games throughout the entire season. And Anna Foley is only in her first year. But I think where the biggest difference is the fact that Anna Foley only shoots 13% from behind the arc, and Breanna Stewart's a lot better of a shooter. We can say that. But she's a 3-time MAC Rookie of the Week, back-to-back, and she's been averaging over 20 points per game throughout that stretch. And I think it's the way that it's not all the stuff that's not going to necessarily show up on the stat sheet, but it's the amount of eyes that they command when they have the ball offensively. And even when they're off the ball, just about the fact that you have to prepare for them every single game and game in and game out, because you know they can go off for 20, 25, maybe even 30 points. I haven't seen that from Anna Foley yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see it down the road in her career. But she's been averaging so many points that I think it's makes the most sense right now, even though they're not in season.
Yeah, I like that Connecticut comparison too, UConn to Quinnipiac. But Brandon, let's go on to you.
Yeah, I went with Anna Foley as well, but instead of the WNBA, I went the NBA route, and I said Joel Embiid. Both can get trigger happy from three.
Trigger happy. My gosh.
Anna Foley, as you said, is 13% from three, and she should not be shooting any threes.
Joel Embiid's shooting almost 37%.
It's the weakest part of his game.
Okay.
They're both dominant scorers. Like you mentioned, Anna Foley is a dominant scorer. Joel Embiid is one of the best scorers in the NBA. They can also rebound very well for their position, and they can protect the rim at a high level. And both are typically the leading scorers for their teams, as well as the teams liking to play through them, as many times the ball in Philadelphia plays through Embiid, and the same thing with Anna Foley and Quinnipiac.
Yeah, see, I see what you're saying, where how the offense kind of flows through both of those players, but how much does Anna Foley complain in a basketball game? Just asking. I'm just asking.
She has a better personality than Joel Embiid, but on the court play style.
So then how does the comparison make sense?
Guys, we gotta move on here.
I'm just asking.
We gotta move on. But
I'm
let's
just making so much sense, I guess.
Let's flip the switch and go to men's. Which current men's basketball player are you two comparing to a pro? Brandon, passing it to you this time.
So I'm going to go with Reed Favors. I'm going to compare him to Duncan Robinson of the Miami Heat. Both tall with big arm length. Neither one of them are necessarily known as strong defenders or known for their strong defense. And both are just three-point specialists that can light it up with a small opening. Either one of those guys, if you're down 9, 12 points, back-to-back possessions, all of a sudden it's a tight game. These guys can get hot out of nowhere, and there's a huge spark plug off the bench for their respective teams.
Yeah, Brandon, I actually do like that pick. You kind of tickled my heart twines with just being a Heat fan myself. So I do like that pick. But I'm also going to go with the shooter, but it's going to be Matt Blanc to Jamal Murray. And Jamal Murray, I feel like both of them, they're just two sharp shooters from behind the arc, similar to how Duncan Robinson and Reed Favors are, both at 6'4". But from behind the arc, Matt Blanc shooting 36.3% from three, and Jamal Murray, I took it from his freshman year at Kentucky, since just like I said, the stats on the floor have been like a lot of it separate because the NBA just plays so many more games, shooting almost 41% from three for Jamal Murray. But I feel like it's they have the confidence to shoot the ball no matter what the score is, no matter what the game is, how bad of a shooting day they may be having. But also what I like about both of them is that they both get to the paint with no regard for human life. There could be Rudy Gobert coming into the paint. It doesn't matter. They're still going to try to dunk it on their heads, even if he is a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. And I feel like Matt Blanc and Jamal Murray can score at all three levels of the game, and I think that's what makes them most sense. Now, I will say, I think Matt Blanc has a little bit more bounce than Jamal Murray, but I feel like that makes the most sense to NBA players. May not have been getting as hype as usual compared to earlier in his year, but I still think it makes the most sense.
Yeah.
All right, now, how could we forget the great Bobcats coaches? Between Trisha Fabry and Tom Pecora, which professional coaches would you two compare either to? Connor, round us out here.
Yeah, so I was dealt with giving it to Tom Pecora. I know we've talked about it a lot, but I feel like the best comparison for him has got to be Doc Rivers from the Milwaukee Bucks. Kind of started out in the booth this year, kind of similar to Tom Pecora. I don't know if you knew this, but between Fordham and his time at Quinnipiac, he actually did call a lot of athletic A10 games as a color commentator, so I don't know if you knew that or not, but it's kind of similar to how Doc Rivers' career has gone. They've both been kind of all over the place, all over the country, in the NBA and in college basketball. Rivers does have the edge on him with the 2008 Boston Celtics. Brandon, I'm sure you like that. But it could have also just been because it was All-Star Weekend this week, and Doc Rivers kind of got the nod over Adrian Griffin before he got fired as the Bucks head coach. But it could have been that. But I feel like it just makes the most sense because he tends to be pretty personable with the media and his players as well, which I'll talk about later in my final roar.
And I like that, but Pecora, at least he started this season with his current team.
Yeah,
but
that's
anyway,
a good point. That's fair.
I got the task of dealing with comparing Trisha Fabry, and I compared her to Greg Popovich. And I said that these are both heavily successful coaches that have been doing it forever. Popovich has been doing it for 30 years. Trisha Fabry is right behind him with 29. And Popovich is dealing with the second youngest team in the NBA, while Fabry is coaching a squad that consists of 7 first years and 1 transfer. She has to get so many new players involved and have to teach them the system, kind of bring them the way against going some of these veteran teams in the MAC. The same way Popovich is dealing with these young players, Victor Wembanyama, trying to get them competitive and dealing with a tough, competitive Western Conference in the NBA. Both these coaches have unbelievable confidence. I'm sure you've seen it. There's a really big banner in there that says Fabry 500.
Yeah, I think I've seen it once or twice.
Yeah, it's huge. Can't miss it. Yeah, she has had so much success with this program, similar to how Greg Popovich had so much success with the San Antonio Spurs. I think they're both just icons in their position.
Yeah, I know that Greg Popovich tends to be a pretty, mellow person. He's pretty mad a lot of times, but has his moments of creativity in his interviews. But I will say, Trish Fabry, I feel like she's a lot more personable, talking to all of us after games and kind of just making the most of it and kind of just being a better person in the press conferences. But I'm sure she's just as good of a coach as she is a person.
Yeah, she doesn't have those sarcastic wits like Greg Popovich.
Yeah, he does have them once in a while, but not as much as I think as Trish. She just has a better overall person.
All right, those were some fun comparisons, but I think that segment truly popped. But unfortunately, we have to head into another commercial break, but don't go anywhere just yet, because when we come back, we'll head to the ice to discuss another impressive weekend for both ice hockey teams.
What do you think you're doing, Kevin?
Was just gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
Like hearing voices?
Like your text-to-emoji ratio?
Oh man, the selfies. Selfie, nailed it.
We all have warning signs that let us know that we're probably not okay to drive. Mine is pretending to be your subconscious.
Craig, come on man, let's split a ride home.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
Maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made home ownership happen. Homeschooling yourself on loans, beefing up your credit score.
So I'm pre-approved.
You were like, yes! Sorry. Color coding listings, ticking boxes, and flushing every toilet in a 20-mile radius. Home sweet home. You aced house hunting. Now get the tips you need to get on track at
Welcome back to Studio 125, and thanks for joining us. Let's get started with a major hockey story headed into this weekend. The women's ice hockey team is entering ECAC hockey tournament play, and going in, who do each of you think will be the star of this team in tournament time? Connor, take it away.
Yeah, James, I think it's got to be the captain, but not Sadie Peart. I think it's got to be defenseman Kate Riley. She has shown up in the biggest moments throughout her entire career, especially these last 2 seasons when she has been kind of that focal point on the defensive side. She's played in 34 games this year, has 38 points, and currently on a 3-game point streak. It seems like she always, like I said, always shows up in the biggest moments, and there's no bigger moment than heading to these playoffs on probably her last go-around with the entire program. I know she wants to go out on a high note. We've seen that so many times. And we've seen her score those game winners when the games matters most, getting under that 3-minute, 2-minute mark in the third period, and just from the point, a lot of times the one-timers. Probably one of the coolest things about hockey overall is just when you get a pass from across the ice and you just hit a one-timer, it just goes bar down. It's just one of the greatest things I've ever seen in hockey. And she also shows up quite a bit defensively, consistently blocking shots and sacrificing her body, especially for hockey when it's such a physical sport. Even in women's hockey, it's very physical, that she consistently shows up on the entire 200 feet of ice, and I feel like that's going to be the biggest key for them. When the lights shine the brightest, their stars have to show up, and I think it's got to be Kate Riley this weekend.
I'm not going to lie, Connor, I do not like to agree with you, but I also went Kate Riley.
Oh, you did? Oh, no.
She is the top point getter on this team, like you mentioned. Yeah. And when she goes, this team goes. Oh, and let me give you a fun fact. Over the last 2 years, they have only scored more than 2 goals twice in 7 games of ECAC tournament play. It's not good enough. They need to get that offense going. And the offense has struggled in this tourney. The best offensive player has to be at their best for this team to succeed. She's the captain. She's the leader. She's the offensive spark plug for this team. She is the driving force of this team. And if this team wants to be competitive, score more goals, go farther in the tournament than they have over the last few years, it's got to be on the shoulders of Kate Riley, and she has to be the best player on the ice for this team.
Yeah, in the last 2 years, they've played against Colgate, and to say the least, Colgate is one of the best women's hockey programs, especially over the last couple of years. But I feel like offensively, when it comes to that, they're going to have to lean on more towards Sadie Peart, Maya Labad, and all these different players who've been able to score points. And let me not forget Kayla Marsh, who's been one of the top freshmen in the entire country. So they've had these offensive players, but it feels like a lot of times when the moments shine the brightest that they've kind of fallen apart. And I feel like Kate Riley and maybe even some of the different defenders like Kendall Cooper's been playing great offensively, scored a lot of goals offensively, but I think it's going to be the best part moving forward.
I understand you got a lot to talk about the
I always
hockey
do.
offense,
I always do.
Let's jump back to Hamden as the men's ice hockey team had a dominant weekend with newcomers performing especially well throughout this season. Which first-year transfer has made the biggest impact for Rand Pecknold's squad? Brandon, you take it.
I'm going to have to go with Travis Treloar. He has 10 goals, 9 assists for 19 points in his Hamden debut season. He's coming over from the Big Ten, Ohio State. I think he's added a lot of Big Ten qualities to this team. He's added some speed, he's added skill, and he's just been a huge impact player that's helped this team really get going. He's missed 9 games this season, and in those games, you really could see the impact with his team not scoring as many goals and not having the same success as they were when he's on the ice. And He's shown to have plenty of skill, like I previously mentioned. Number 8 play in this last week's SportsCenter top 10 from the game against RPI with the between-the-legs breakaway goal. He's shown a high quality of skill that I think that his team might have been lacking in the last few years, but his qualities of coming over here have been huge for the program.
Yeah, I feel like you might just be saying that because there is that recency bias. And I'll say it, that goal on Saturday against RPI, just absolutely disgusting.
Great goal.
I'll just put it out there.
I think it should have been
But
higher.
a guy that probably could have stopped it in his first year in Hamden, I got to go Vinny Duplessis. He's been one of the best parts about this defensive squad. Obviously, you have Jaden Lee, you have Cooper Moore, you have Avari Rastin, all these different guys, but they all can't stop the puck when it goes in the net. It's got to be one guy, and I feel like if he didn't come in, they would have gone with Marinov at the starter. We wouldn't have known if Chase Clark eventually did transfer to Sacred Heart, and he probably would have grabbed another transfer goalie, but obviously that's all in the past. We never know what's actually going to happen. Marinov has had a .913 save percentage, and obviously Duplessis had a .916 save percentage, but I feel like Marinov has made a lot of small mistakes that kind of added up over time. In that New Hampshire game, in that second game, he let up 4 goals in the first period, and Vinny Duplessis had to come in later because he's had all this experience. You talk about Travis Treloar coming from the Big Ten. Vinny Duplessis came from the Hockey East. If you haven't picked up on anything about hockey this season, BU, Boston University, and Boston College have been the top 2 programs coming from the Hockey East, and it feels like that conference is just kind of taken over this entire season. But I feel like Duplessis has built out the Bobcats quite a bit, and it's just a matter of time. He's been really impressed me this first season in Hamden.
Yeah, I'm very impressed by Duplessis as well, but unfortunately our show is almost over. But don't touch that screen, because when we come back, we'll have the QBSN and Q30 Bobcat Game Day recap. Don't go anywhere.
Type 2 diabetes can have a big impact on your life, but how can it be prevented? Well, the first step is knowing if you have prediabetes, a serious medical condition that puts you at high risk for type 2 diabetes. 1 in 3 American adults has prediabetes, but more than 80% don't know they have it. The good news is, prediabetes can be reversed, and for many people, healthy changes in their daily routine can make a big difference. Take the 1-minute risk test today at doihaveprediabetes.org.
When we adopt a shelter pet, we discover they're a unique mix of all kinds of things.
Come on, Jules, spot on this last one. There it is. Keep going with it. Leo.
They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love.
This week, QBSN and Q30 worked together to create Bobcat Game Day, a live studio show for Quinnipiac men's basketball's matchup with Niagara. Did you miss the game? Take a listen to Brandon's game story, narrated by Ben Kane.
On
Sunday afternoon, the Niagara Purple Eagles came into Hamden and were able to defeat the Bobcats by a score of 80-66. The cold February weather seemed to sneak into the arena early on, as halfway through the first half, points were hard to come by, as both teams were shooting 30% or less, with the Bobcats leading 13-10 at the under 12-minute media timeout. Quinnipiac held control early for most of the half, but Niagara was able to ride and keep the wave themselves and keep close distance the whole time. The tide began to shift when J.J. Riggins missed a free throw in the final seconds of the half, and Niagara was able to get out in transition and make a buzzer-beating layup off the fingertips of Dre Bullock to tie the game at 37 heading into the break. When the Purple Eagles opened up the second half with a three, the 40-37 lead served as the first lead of the game for the Purple Eagles, a lead that they never gave back. After a basket from Blanc and a free throw from Politiano to tie the game at 40, the Bobcats head coach Tom Pecora tried to switch the momentum up when he got hit with a technical 2.5 minutes into the half after another foul on Quinnipiac. The tactic seemed to backfire, however, as Niagara seemed to pick up steam after the technical as they went on a 10-2 run to open up a 50-42 lead.
I was hoping my technical would get us a little fired up and maybe we'd get a whistle or two, but it didn't play out that way.
Pecora said the Bobcats were able to fight back after being down by as much as 9 to make it a 66-64 Niagara with 3.5 minutes to go in the game. However, after back-to-back converted and ones by the Purple Eagles to extend the lead to 72-64 was part of a 12-0 run that put this game away.
We weren't able to impose our will with our size and physicality, and it was a parade to the foul line.
To read the rest of this article, go to theqbsn.com.
One final time, we welcome you along to Bobcat Breakdown. As the show comes to a close, before we say goodbye, it's time for some final roars. Play us out, Connor.
The men's basketball team has their best season in a very, very long time. The amount of game experience has helped the Bobcats dominate a conference that was up for grabs at the beginning of the season. Graduate students Savion Lewis and Matt Blanc have become the leaders and elders of this group. Leading the way is the coaching staff, obviously, with assistants Sean Morris, Tahar Sutton, Bradley Jacks, Jeff Robinson, and Aaron Robinson. Head coach Tom Pecora has the team in a place that it hasn't been in any of their lifetimes. Pecora just inked a new 4-year contract extension to stay with the team until the end of the 2027-28 school year. So what does that mean for the future of this Bobcats program? 2024 commits Samson Riley and Braylon Ritvo committing and assuming more to come. Talent is rolling into Linder Court. Pecora is the type of guy that you want to be around, putting aside the basketball altogether. The type of leader that will be honest, truthful, and hold people to the highest of standards because he wants the best out of his coaching staff and his players. That standard of being the hardest working man in the room is evident on the court. Every player diving for the loose balls, making the extra pass, and celebrating everyone's successes. It is not going to stop this year, especially with the type of coach and man that Pecora is.
I don't want to be a jinx for the Quinnipiac Athletics, but I think it's time to say we are in the golden era of Quinnipiac sports. Over the last 2 years, we have sent our women's soccer team to the NCAA tournament twice, our men's soccer and our volleyball team to the tournament once. Our women's hockey team has been there every year of my QU career, and I am now in my 3rd year. The men's hockey team is coming off of our first national championship, and we are a good run of games in the Atlantic City away from seeing our men's basketball team in the NCAA tournament, as we have consistently seen on mock brackets from college basketball analysts. With that being said, embrace what these athletes are doing, and make sure to go out and see a game, and make your voices heard, as we are entering a new era of Quinnipiac sports that you will surely not want to miss.
Quinnipiac men's basketball is off to their best start in decades, sitting first place in the MAC even after this week's games. But you wouldn't be able to tell by attendance figures this season. While men's ice hockey is in the perennial spotlight, one of the nation's hottest mid-major teams is consistently playing in front of spotty student sections and scattered seats in general admission. Now I know Hamden is a hockey town, but it hasn't always been like this for Quinnipiac basketball, with previous student sections looking like the Yale game during the regular season. So what's stopping the fans? Show up for the team as they march toward Atlantic City with a chance to raise their first MAC championship banner and show the world, and especially national television on Friday against Fairfield, what the Bobcats can do when the crowd is behind them. Now that's all the time that we have here on Bobcat Breakdown. Thank you all for tuning in yet another Tuesday, and be sure to follow us on social media at Q30 Sports and Q30 Television. It's QBSN, and find us online at q30tv.com and theqbsn.com. Thank you to producers and everyone hard at work behind the scenes.
Yeah. Now,
But before
Brandon. Now, before we do eventually wrap up, I just want to say, I want to go back to that Anna Foley and Joel Embiid topic, but unfortunately, that is all the time we have for tonight. For James Blanu and Brandon Murdoch, I'm Connor Core. We'll see you around, Bobcats.